Anzac Day to celebrate, commemorate and remember those who have fallen, sir, lest we forget.
I call the Honourable Member David Cleandon. Tēnā koe.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Tēnā koe. Mr Speaker, I'm pleased to take a short call on this bill to affirm the Green Party's support for this very good bill, and our compliments to whatever combination of Labour hearts and minds brought it into being. It's a very well thought out, quite a simple piece of legislation. It simply affirms that every year New Zealanders will enjoy 11 public holidays rather than only having that 5 years out of 7 and missing out on those other 2 years. I am genuinely surprised that the government hasn't come round to supporting this legislation. I've listened reasonably carefully to their speeches in various readings, and that's not always an enjoyable experience, listening to speeches from that side of the House. But it has been interesting to just try and unpick what their objections are. Economic, my fellow Northlander who just resumed his seat gave a very sincere speech reflecting on his commitment to Anzac Day. And I'd have to say that if I thought, or if any of my Green colleagues thought, that the passing of this legislation would in any way diminish or degrade the importance or the integrity of that celebration, we would probably not. Well, in fact, I can say certainly I wouldn't support it, and I suspect neither would my colleagues. Anzac Day is critically important. I confess in my former life I was more or less committed to attending services on any given Anzac Day. As an MP, I've also seen it as an absolute duty to turn up at local celebrations, and also a pleasure. It's an important day in our history and one we should continue to acknowledge. The proposition that somehow Mondaysing Anzac Day will lead to less commitment to it, a smaller turnout to honour that day, is at odds with the evidence from Australia, where the Mondaysation has been in place for some time, and numbers, if anything, are increasing that attendances at Anzac Day celebrations, as indeed they are here in New Zealand, as younger people realise this is not about glorification of war, it is about acknowledging sacrifice and also a commitment to doing everything we can to avoid wars in the future. Sir, some of the objection to this bill has been around the economic effect, the effect on business. And again, I simply don't see that as being valid. We heard some extraordinary numbers in the first reading about the tens of millions of dollars it would cost the country every year to have 2 more days off every 2 years out of 7, rather. And those numbers simply do not add up. There will be some businesses will close, obviously, on days and otherwise they would not. But that is more than compensated in the scheme of things around the larger economic picture by the fact that the Mondaysation will enable people to have the extra time off. Long weekends will become feasible. There will be a knock-on effect in tourism and elsewhere. So we don't accept that there's any economic difficulty or issue involved in that. It contributes to our work-life balance. New Zealanders actually work some of the longest hours of any developed country in the world, and unfortunately that doesn't flow through to productivity, which I'll say a little more about in a moment, but just making sure that we do maximise the work-life balance opportunities for people in the workplace, and this bill does make a small but a useful contribution towards that. Mr Bennett seemed concerned that the bill didn't go far enough, that somehow its effect was so little as to not warrant his support. I'm somewhat tempted to dust off the Green Party's April Fool's Day spoof that suggested another 8 holidays per year. We might find support for that from the Minister, the MP, rather, from Hamilton. But it does seem an extraordinary proposition that because this is a relatively minor matter, albeit a positive matter, that it cannot be supported for that reason. So I mentioned Anzac Day. Waitangi Day too is an important observation in our history. It's very important to us collectively, and personally it's an important day. I have both Māori and Pākehā tūpuna who put their names to that document, put their signatures on it, so it's always been very much a part of my personal DNA. Living in the north, well, even before living in the north, I've been a regular attendee at Waitangi Day celebrations in Waitangi, and it is noticeable that where Waitangi Day falls at a weekend, you tend to find a different attendance than through the normal course of events. It is the day of the week on which it falls does affect the attendance at Waitangi, people's travel arrangements and so on. This situation where if it falls on a Saturday or Sunday, people know that the Monday is also a holiday, will, I think, enable more people to come to Waitangi and enjoy the celebration at that very key site. It will do no harm for Northland tourism. As we know, Northland is one of the still relatively undiscovered gems in the tourism crown of New Zealand. There is a great deal to enjoy there. There is an increasing supply of tourism attractions, accommodation, and I would encourage people who are heading north to hang around a while and just see what a great deal there is to offer in the north. So I mentioned the issue of holidays, the fact that people seem to think that if we have one more holiday in each of those 2 years, that somehow there will be an economic cost to that. The number of holidays New Zealanders have, be they large or small, you can argue about whether 11 is a lot or a few. Our key economic issue around that is actually productivity. We do not have a productive economy, and the reason for that is that one significant, probably the single most important contributor to that low productivity is poor labour productivity. And I believe firmly that the reason for that is that we have a very poor management culture in New Zealand, that we do not have a good rather that we have too many people in management positions who are actually not good at that task. We have this unfortunate habit of promoting people who might be good at a particular activity to a management role. And this has been acknowledged by employer groups, by employee groups, by the finance sector, by bankers, by a whole array of different sectors of the economy, different interests in the economy. And the issues are not about whether we have 11 days off a year or only 9 or 10. The issue is about we don't invest enough in management and upskilling our managers in New Zealand. And if we invest a little bit there, we will get a great deal more productivity in our economy. People perhaps could stop working such extraordinarily long hours and with no economic cost, and in fact with significant economic benefit. So all in all, we do think, as I said, the Greens have been pleased to support this legislation from the beginning. We will continue to offer that support, and we look forward to in future years enjoying with the rest of New Zealand the time that it will allow for people to maintain work-life balance, to spend time with their families, to enjoy this beautiful country of ours, and we commend this bill and it's to the House. Kia ora.
I call the Honourable Member Andrew Little.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's a great pleasure to take a call on the holiday.